You were never meant to hear this. The documents I'm about to reveal remained sealed for over 160 years. Federal clearance only, eyes-only access. But somehow, they slipped through the cracks. Beneath the rotting floorboards of an abandoned stone church in upstate New York, they found 143 unmarked graves. Each skeleton showed the same signs: shattered bones that had healed before death, lungs scarred by near drowning, and symbols carved into the bone itself, as if pain had been ritualized, like a sacrament. This wasn't a war. This wasn't random violence. This was something else, something orchestrated, a carefully engineered descent into suffering, masked behind faith and buried under generations of silence. The Ravencroft family, a name erased from census records, redacted from court transcripts, and left out of every history textbook. Until now. Ravenwood, New York, 40 miles north of Albany. On the surface, a sleepy 19th-century town built by farmers, traders, and lumbermen. But beneath its soil, something darker grew. The Second Great Awakening had set fire to the American psyche. Everywhere you looked, men with trembling hands and sweat-soaked brows claimed to hear the voice of God. New religions sprouted like weeds. Prophets spoke of redemption, of salvation, of suffering as the only true path to purity. Into this fevered landscape stepped the Ravencroft brothers, Ezra, Silas, and Caleb. 3 men with black eyes, pale faces, and sermons that spoke not of hope, but of necessary pain. They built a church unlike any other. Dark stone, windowless walls, and an octagonal sanctuary that trapped sound and heat and fear. Ezra was the voice of authority. His eyes, deep, hollow, unreadable, fixed on each member of his congregation like a judge handing down a sentence. Silas was the scholar, always scribbling, filling journals with cryptic interpretations of Scripture, twisting verses into justification for what would come next. And Caleb was the whisper in the dark, soft-spoken, distant. But when he spoke, the entire room fell silent. Some said he entered trances, others said possession. Either way, his words crawled under your skin. Their doctrine? Simple at first. Salvation through suffering, purification through tribulation, pain as divine currency. The more you suffered, the closer you came to God. But what began with sermons soon bled into flesh. The first rituals were voluntary, men and women stepping forward to be cleansed. Cold water immersion until they gasped for air, beatings meant to simulate the scourging of Christ. But soon, choice disappeared. Children were taken from their parents at dawn, dragged to the basement chambers where screams echoed through stone walls. Near drowning became routine. Bones were broken, then set, then broken again. Weeks without food, sleep deprivation, isolation in pitch darkness. The human mind unravels quickly under these conditions, and that's exactly what the Ravencrofts wanted. Break them, rebuild them, obedient, loyal, spiritually empty vessels ready to be filled with doctrine. By 1830, Ravenwood had transformed. Outsiders spoke of the town as cursed. Crops withered despite good soil. Livestock were found dead, their eyes missing. Travelers disappeared along nearby roads. But inside the Church of the Pure Spirit, the Ravencrofts thrived. Their following grew. Hundreds, packed shoulder to shoulder, chanting through the night, sleepwalking through the streets during daylight, eyes vacant, smiles forced. The line between devotion and possession blurred. Government officials sent inspectors, but none returned with usable reports. One was found days later, wandering barefoot, unable to speak. Another simply vanished. Fear took root in surrounding towns, but no one dared intervene. It wasn't until the winter of 1833 that cracks began to show. A young woman named Mercy Whitaker, gaunt, bruised, trembling, escaped through the woods. It took her 3 days to reach the nearest town. Her testimony, when she could finally speak, sent ripples through the state legislature. She spoke of bone pits beneath the church, of children buried alive, of ritual drownings masked as baptisms, of the ninth chamber, a sealed room where screams never stopped. But most chilling were her words about Caleb. How, during midnight ceremonies, he would chant in languages no one understood, words not found in Scripture, words that bent the air and made the walls vibrate. By spring, the state militia was mobilized. Orders were clear: search, secure, and, if necessary, burn the place to the ground. But when troops arrived, Ravenwood was empty. Every home is abandoned. Livestock left to starve. Fires still smoldering in hearths, as if the town had vanished mid-meal. The church doors stood open, but inside, no sign of life, only bloodstains, broken restraints, and the overwhelming stench of rot. Below the sanctuary, the militia found the burial chambers, 143 bodies, each showing the same scars, the same healed fractures, the same carved symbols. It was a mass grave, but more than that, it was a record of systematic psychological and physical obliteration. The Ravencrofts were gone. In the months that followed, federal agents sealed the area. The church was demolished, the remains buried deeper, and all records classified under emergency national security protocols. The official story? Religious hysteria. No mention of the experiments. No mention of the behavioral conditioning techniques observed in survivor interviews. No mention of what had been carved into the bones. But a handful of files survived, slipped into private collections, traded among academics like forbidden relics, and within those pages a pattern emerged. Psychological control systems masked as spiritual doctrine. Pain cycles are designed to erase identity. A blueprint for engineered submission. You must understand, this wasn't just one rogue cult. The Ravencroft methods found their way into military interrogation manuals decades later. Isolation chambers, sleep deprivation, repetitive trauma, breaking the will, then rebuilding it. The fingerprints of Ravenwood can be traced through MK Ultra, Project Artichoke, even the enhanced interrogation programs of the early 2000s. But it started here, in a forested town no longer on any map, under the black-eyed gaze of three brothers who believed God spoke through suffering. This is not ancient history. This is the foundation of modern psychologic. And here's where you come in. If you've made it this far, you're already part of the small percentage who don't turn away when confronted with forbidden truth. But I need you to do something. In the comments, right now, type the phrase, "I see the pattern." Write it once, pause, then write it again. Lock it in. Let the algorithm and your subconscious register that you're not just watching, you're waking up. You're becoming part of the few who choose to see the hidden structures shaping human behavior. The pattern that started in a dark stone church and continues all around you. The deeper you go, the more you realize. Ravenwood was never about faith. It was a controlled laboratory, human subjects manipulated through orchestrated cycles of hope, fear, and dependency. The Ravencroft brothers didn't invent these techniques. They perfected them. They understood something few do even now. If you break a man enough times, if you teach him that relief only comes through obedience, you don't just own his body. You own his mind. You own his loyalty. You own his soul. Each session of pain wasn't random. It was timed, calibrated, just enough to destroy identity, but leave the subject alive and desperate for approval. This wasn't religion. This was behavioral engineering, wrapped in scripture, delivered by men who smiled while they destroyed. But the most disturbing part was what they left behind. After the militia raid, survivors, if you could call them that, exhibited identical psychological scars, night terrors, dissociation, emotional flattening, complete dependency on authority figures. Even decades later, their descendants showed generational trauma responses, hypercompliance, night blindness, stress-triggered seizures. The human mind doesn't easily escape generational programming. And when I tell you this, understand I'm not talking about distant history. Governments learned from this. Institutions studied this. What happened in Ravenwood became the blueprint for breaking people, then convincing them they were free. And the symbols? God, the symbols. That's the piece that never made it into the official reports, carved deep into bone. Geometric patterns that match sigils found in much older texts. Symbols with origins, not from Christian scripture, but from pre-Abrahamic ritual systems. Rituals about inversion, the breaking of will, the erasure of selfhood. Those markings are still classified, but through leaked photographs and forensic reconstructions, fragments have surfaced. Patterns linked to control-based esoteric traditions, going back to Sumerian binding rites, and certain elements of Babylonian enthrallment magic. You think this was just psychological? This was spiritual warfare, the kind that leaves scars on both body and soul.